Mustache Tales.
Yeah!
Hey, it's J. Chandra Segar with my good buddy Hayes MacArthur. The new episode of Mustache Tales with Michael Voltaggio, the all-star American chef. Take it away, Hayes.
What's up, Mike? So,
What's
Mike,
up,
we
guys?
start each one of these podcasts with a story. And I've known you for a long time, and we've had a lot of deep conversations covering everything in life, from children to careers to traveling to cultures. I haven't told you this, and it's not a bad thing, but I know some of the struggles you deal with, so I just want to be upfront quickly. I was a horrible waiter at a really great restaurant, and I know that's something that drives you crazy. And the reason that this happened, when I first got out to Los Angeles, I was doing stand-up comedy, playing semi-pro football, and I took a job at a really nice restaurant, and I lied on my resume. And I lied to the point where I said I worked at La Perroquette in Chicago. I had all these which is a big one, and you can't fake the service industry. You can't fake the knowledge that comes with food, the knowledge that comes with service. But I tried. And so my biggest flaw in the service industry was I was super casual with people who were expecting to have a high-end dining experience. But I didn't know. That's just the way I related to people. So I would say things like, "What's up, guys? Good evening. How we doing?" and stuff like that. And the owner of the restaurant, Goran, would overhear me. And it drove him. He was from Montenegro, and his dream was building this restaurant. And he was so good at it because he was such a hard ass and he was so specific. But I had very little knowledge of this side of the business. So I thought I was being welcoming, and is the word congenial, when I would go over to these tables and I would, say, "What's up?" or "Yo, I like that jacket," or "Where are we in from?" Kind of doing shtick. And the whole thing culminated. I worked there for about 9 months. And one day, he downgraded me to lunch shifts. So I got left on dinners. I couldn't do dinners. You had to memorize all the specials too. And I have cheat sheets with notes. He'd catch me looking down at the specials. So I got downgraded to lunch shifts. And then one day he and I just had it out in the restaurant, in the kitchen. And I walked off. He fired me. It was a simultaneously parting of the ways. And I felt so bad. I didn't know that years later, I would have a close friendship with you, and I would watch your experience and what you've had, from starting with, for those of you that don't know, our guest today is, I don't like defining people, Jay. I was talking to you about this earlier today. Don't you hate it when people say, "What's your deal?" And you got to surmise somebody in 30 seconds? It's annoying, isn't it? People have a pitch on themselves.
People usually see me and they're like, "When did you get out?" And I'm like, "What?"
Because of the tats. Well, I say that about you, especially, Mike, because I think the first thing that really put you on the map in terms of culture and in the restaurant business and the food world was winning Top Chef season 6, and then opening a number of great restaurants, going on to host stuff, having a unique way of approaching stuff with, molecular gastromolecular food.
You're right there.
Didn't you go to Bowden? Didn't you go to Bowden?
Who, Mike?
Me?
No, Hayes. Didn't you go to Bowden?
Oh,
Or were they like?
I didn't learn that
lied
word.
about that too.
I didn't learn that word. So my shame of being horrible in the service industry, I really got a lot of empathy for being on the other side of it when I would talk with Mike and talk about the frustrations and some of the stuff that he has to go through and do with having restaurants in Washington, D.C., and Las Vegas and Los Angeles and Mammoth, this new restaurant opened in Mammoth, Volcano. So I feel more now like this opening to this show was a confession, Michael. And I just wanted you to know that about me.
I appreciate your honesty. And what's funny about that is LA specifically, when you're hiring servers, 75% of them work in the entertainment industry or some creative field.
Well, that's so true. It's like a lot of people come to Hollywood because they're like, well, I'm really good looking and I'm super charming, so maybe I should be an actor. and they get off and they get here and they don't know the first thing about being a play or being an actor or any of it. And so what they rely on then is their charm, which is what Hayes did here, and just kind of sweet talk people into thinking, everybody likes me back in Chicago, so these people are going to like me too. And it's a good strategy, but it's not in line with what like real restaurants and real chefs want.
Well, like when they ask you, like, are there any capers, and you think they're talking about crime stories, you're you're just in the wrong world.
Before we get too far, I just want to say that the restaurant in Mammoth, I think, is called Volcania, right?
Well, it's Italian for volcano. So Volcania Mammoth is a volcano. So
okay, great.
My family, when they came over from Italy first, actually came on the Volcania. The ship was called the Volcania. And so
sweet.
It's in a volcano. Yes, Hayes was correct. He just said it in the wrong way.
Okay. That's good to know. Good to know. I didn't want people going out there looking for a volcano when there's another.
Yeah, it's Volcania. Yeah, it's Italian for volcano.
I go to Mammoth a lot. I'm gonna. I don't know. I mean, hopefully you'll let me in. But I mean, I'm gonna come and try.
My brother was there. Could not get a reservation, Jay.
Right.
So, why didn't you just text me?
I would have.
There's a restaurant in Chicago called Alinea. And I'm probably mispronouncing it, but Alinea. Okay, great.
Yeah.
A guy I know from college, Nick Kokonis, started it. And in college, he had this is a way for me never to get a table here, but he had a light blue BMW and the license plate said Coco 5. And, some of us probably made fun of that license plate. And he might have heard about it. I don't know. But when I tried to get a table at Alinea, he was like, oh, yeah, I mean, it looks like there's a 4 or 5 month wait. So, you put your name in. And I'm like, revenge is a dish best served
you got
cold.
You.
Coco 5.
You got you.
Well done. Well done.
That's a perfect analogy for your story, Jay.
But the guy's cool. I mean, he's a cool guy. He makes these great restaurants. But what are you going to do? When you can get people back, you should. That's my view.
But I also, Nick is a great example of and I don't know if we're going off track here a little bit.
There is no track.
They also created Talk, which is a tech sort of situation, one of the best or most relevant reservation systems there is right now. And so simultaneously, while they were, sort of developing Alinea and then strategically started to get into other things, they developed this app or this I don't know, reservation system, which I think they just sold for a significant amount of money. But it's not enough to just be a restaurateur anymore. There's the economics, don't sort of make enough sense. And that's where entertainment got sort of involved. We got involved in entertainment and then all these other little businesses. And so now all of a sudden we're not just, to Hayes' question earlier, I'm not just a chef. I have to be an entrepreneur and I am a president of a company and I do have a lot of other responsibilities that I didn't go to university to learn how to do. And so navigating through all of that, it's pretty interesting because I woke up one day and I was a human resources director and I was an accountant and I had to speak lawyer and legal and be able to read contracts and all this stuff that barely, a 2.1 average in high school GPA didn't prepare me for. And so then I had to really dive into developing all these various different skill sets that Nick and Grant did with Alinea. They also opened up casual restaurants and they got into they're making their own plates and then developing that app. And it's just it's not enough. Hard work is not enough. There's you have to be creative.
Yeah.
But you had a background. Yeah. I don't know if this is a unique start, but I know your start where you very much were corporately trained at a young age. You came up through the Greenbrier and then the Four Seasons Hotel in Naples. So I feel like what that's an advantage in the restaurant world, because yes, it's rock and roll, but it's a business with delineations and all the other things you were just talking about. That had to be helpful.
Well, my first job was at the Holiday Inn in Frederick, Maryland. So that, to go back even further, before I even knew what luxury was, that was luxury to me back then. And then, yeah, I did my apprenticeship at the Greenbrier Hotel. From there, I went to, it was the Ritz-Carlton, not the Four Seasons. I know you just mix up all those fancy hotels in your head, but
All the ones I stay at.
for me, it was important to go in and sort of learn structure and learn what luxury was. And then when I did that, and I did it for several years, I had that sort of foundation, that structure that I didn't have in my life. And I didn't experience any form of luxury until I started working in it. But I knew I wanted to be able to be a customer of that one day. And so, having experienced it, and more specifically, the hospitality aspect of it, the way that they sort of had these mottos, anticipate the guest needs and use their name when it's possible. I felt like as an employee, that made me feel good. So I wanted to do that, but then I could only get so far creatively in that. And that's when I sort of broke off and went to work with people like Charlie Palmer and Jose Andres. And then I would also go in my free time for free, go work for people like Thomas Keller at the French Laundry for a month, like for free, just go there and stage, what they called it. And I actually went to Alinea and spent a month there as well.
Can you give me a table?
You know, it's, I think you can get you a table. You're not giving yourself enough credit.
He gave me a table at the less fancy place down the street, which was great, by the way. But go on.
The Royster, right? Yeah. But I just, you know, it was for me, I kept hitting these ceilings of, this is as far as I can go, what I'm doing right now. So I need to like take a step sideways or take a step back or just pivot and go in a different direction so that I can keep sort of going up. And then what I realized really quick is that I never was going to be satisfied getting to like a certain place. I enjoyed getting there more than I did being there. And so for me, it's constantly trying to like create that climb versus like just enjoying the view. So I'm always like, I think I enjoy going up that hill. Although I'm 45 now and my knees hurt and my back hurts and all that shit, it's not as easy. But at the same time, it's like, for me, it's more fulfilling to sort of reach these milestones. And it's materialistic too. You know, you think about like, you want a car, like I really want to have you talked about Nick's BMW. It's like, you getting the BMW is more fun than having it. So it's like, for me, it's like, that is really, I'm at a point now in my life where I'm satisfied with what I have. So now I'm being more intentional with the things that I want so that the process of getting them is more fulfilling for me. And I think that is something that you learn with maturity. And that's what I had to go through, realizing, having, you know, sort of gotten everything I've ever really wanted, realizing that it didn't make me happy at all. It was fun trying to get it.
It sounds a lot like, to me, like independent filmmaking. It's like, you know, you can work for a big producer or director, but at the end of the day, you're making, and they teach you all these details. But at the end of the day, you're making their movie. And once you start writing and making your own movie, there's so many jobs. And I learned how to write and direct and edit and produce and promote. And you're like, you know, the more you can learn all those things, the better filmmaker you become. And climbing that hill, you know, you're right. As you get older, you think it's going to be harder, but in fact, you have so much knowledge that you're like, it's a shorter process. It's like, I sometimes feel like I'm playing in a game that a lot of people below me don't even know we're playing. They don't even know the game, it feels like.
But I also feel like as an actor, as an artist, or as a creative, like doing those sort of administrative role, or the producer role or the director role or whatever it is, it probably made you a better actor, because having not done that as an actor, you're like, this fucking producer or whatever. And then it's like, when you're that fucking producer, like you're then like, oh wait, okay, I see what they were. Yeah. And you learn this other discipline that you can then take back and apply to.
It's totally true. And what also made me a better actor was I edit my own movies. So I just put the takes where I can, first of all, I look good. Second of all, I'm like, I guess that's the best we got. And then if you put it all together, you're like, I guess he's pretty good.
See, Jay, what you did here, and this is amazing, because you've got a great way of steering it back to yourself, and sometimes it really lines up. And
see, I'm on this glass. Really... You see, I'm on this glass.
He's
No,
like,
but
oh, if you need
this
some
is
merch,
actually
swipe up.
the independent filmmaking apprenticeships and the restaurant business is a brilliant analogy, Jay. I'm going to throw you a lot of credit right now. I want to introduce one thought to it too. When I look at both of those things and I look at the times that both of you guys are talking about when you came up, there was a huge timing element to it, right? So independent filmmaking in the early O's, when you guys came out, Jay, and you were shopping that film around, driving it yourselves and showing up at appearances and doing screenings and independent film festivals, the independent film scene was really happening.
Yeah.
And then Michael learning his craft and all the places he talked about, he was in these kitchens and training under these masters. And then it kind of came at the rise of, notoriety around chefs and what they were doing. And it's like, it's this kismet, as my Jewish brothers and sisters call it, of this kismet of timing where you're doing your thing, you're learning from the best, and then all of a sudden it lines up with what's happening culturally. And that, like, when I think, Mike, of Top Chef and where you were at that time, season 6, that show had a lot of momentum behind it, right? I mean, it was kind of a hit right away, and then it was starting to make people...
It was still risky for me at that time to go and do something like that because I had actually achieved a lot of things as a chef. I had gotten a Michelin star already when I was 26.
Can you explain to our audience, and frankly to me, because I don't know what it is a Michelin star? And
so the guidebook Michelin, sort of goes around, and they created what I would say is like the gold standard for like restaurant. It's consider it like, I don't know, the highest award you can win, I guess, as an actor, an Oscar, an Emmy, or whatever. Like these stars are sort of...
I've won 2 Stonies from High Time magazine, so
very similar to that. So 1 star, 2 star, 3 star, 3 star obviously being the best, blah blah blah, whatever. It's an achievement or an accolade that is attached to your restaurant for a period of time, and then you have to sort of re-earn it every year.
And what's it based on? Like,
there's a criteria, and there's a group of individuals that go around and sort of
undercover, right?
Yeah, exactly. And then one day you get this email or phone call or letter or whatever, and it's like, hey, congratulations. It's not really something you would know that you were getting until they called you and told you that you've received it. But aside, that's not really the point, though, is that, I was sort of earning and winning these awards, and then Top Chef. I was actually running the bazaar for Jose Andres at the SLS Hotel. I opened that hotel as the executive chef and ran that restaurant. That's what moved me to LA. And my sous chef had done Top Chef, and I was sort of busting his balls a little bit one day, and he was like, "Well, if you think it's so easy, why don't you do it?" And I'm like, "I will, and I'll win. Give me the number of the producer." And so he linked it all up, and then I ended up doing it and winning. But at the time, it was still sort of like there's chefs and there's chefs that play chefs on TV, but like serious chefs aren't television chefs. And there was this like weird, like if you do it, you're sort of selling out and blah, blah, blah. And like, and there were big names doing it at the time. I mean, Bobby Flay was really huge on Food Network at the time, coming after Emeril and those guys. And sort of the path had been sort of paved, but it was like you either were a serious restaurant chef or a chef on television. And I thought that there was an opportunity to sort of bridge that gap. And this was 13 years ago. Fast forward to today, everyone that didn't do that at the time, and this is at the highest level of now the serious restaurants, like I think they're all sort of like, well, maybe I should have gotten involved in that a little bit more, because what it did was 2 things. 1, it raised your visibility, but 2, it increased the curiosity that people had to go experience food like what you're making. And so more people were coming into your restaurant because they saw you doing that thing on TV. And so now it starts feeding itself fast. Now we live in this visual society, or we're carrying our device. Like people are eating on Instagram. They're like, this is delicious. And they're not even eating it. They're just like, I love that. I love that. And everyone's commenting, you're such a genius. Your food is incredible. And I'm like, you haven't eaten it yet. Like you're just looking at a picture of it. But because I have this audience now, and I've curated this audience, over the, or developed, like sort of found this audience over the past sort of decade. it's made every part of what I do more visible. And I think the residual value of doing Top Chef, one, the experience and learning a new discipline and a skill set, but two, just like really being able to grow my visibility and make the restaurants busier.
What did this coincide? And just one second, while because I'm tripping on this timing thing of like the rise of when it was all happening. The zeitgeist, I guess, is the word. That's a big word I can pronounce, Jay, from Bowden. Zeitgeist. I can't spell it, but I can say it. But the zeitgeist element of yes, Top Chef, to the Food Network, and I want to ask you: was Anthony Bourdain at that time? This is kind of like asking, I guess, an actor about Robert De Niro or something. Was he as influential because his book was really the inside baseball of what happens in restaurants, and then the show and this Kitchen Confidential, and then his kind of individualism happened around the same time, I think.
I think what Anthony did was he's a great storyteller. He's a brilliant writer, but he also told the truth. So he puts this book out that sort of pulled the curtain back a little bit and let everyone know like what really goes on in our industry. And I feel like for years, none of us told any of that because a lot of it was illegal. A lot of it was sort of bad, whatever you took away from his writing. He sort of told everyone how it was. And I think that, even when you watched him travel the world, like he wrote a lot of his own voiceover or whatever he was saying on those shows, because he was really good at telling stories, but more specifically, he was telling the truth. And I think that that's the authenticity behind what Anthony Bourdain brought to our industry. It, again, made people more curious. They're like, wow, there's more layers to these people that are working in a trade, the food service industry. Like these people, there's more to this onion, wow, I guess, as you peel back the layers.
Yeah, because you sit down, you get to see all the effort and all the drama and the personality behind what's happening, where maybe people weren't even curious about that before. They just sat down and ate. They didn't know that it was.
I still won't buy seafood on a Sunday. Is that still true? Should I still not be doing that?
I'll tell you this. I mean, Amazon pulls up to your house on Sunday now. So there's ways to get good stuff now. You're not just relying on the USPS to get your fish to you anymore.
Okay. I don't know.
They don't work on Sundays, but other people do.
Okay.
That was one of his big secrets in the
yeah, he says it's like the fresh fish comes in on Mondays, and so Sunday's the oldest fish you could eat.
It's true. It is true. But he also, he went around the world and sort of, and I got to follow in his footsteps a little bit, because towards the end of Anthony traveling on Travel Channel, I had a show right behind him. So I was going to just specifically conflict zones around the world. But a lot of times I would go to a country and, to hear the fixers and stuff in the countries where we were going talk about Tony, and just, again, be like, I'm here to shoot a show. And they're like, yeah, but did you know that Anthony Bourdain was here? And I was just like, they were like, yeah, we worked with him. And I'm like, wow, you guys really don't give a shit that I'm here then, because you had him, and like, as you should. And just so he sort of like him and Andrew Zimmern and these, again, and it created this global curiosity now about food, right? Like specifically in this country, where a lot of people didn't, aside from what they could access here in their own hometowns and so forth, like there wasn't really a need to like eat harissa or like, dishes from around the world, or that's a specific ingredient, but specific dishes from around the world. And then all of a sudden they're seeing it and they're like, wait, I want to try that. And so now more restaurants are opening up with that type of cuisine domestically, because the curiosity that came from food entertainment and this tour that you took with Anthony or Andrew Zimmer or some of these people that did that. It just shows how entertainment can really help really any industry.
Wait, talk to me about that show, because I remember when you created it and you were out there. I talked to you a few times. You were in crazy parts of the world. What were some of the places you went to, and how did that show come to be?
So a producer called me. She had created this show called Breaking Borders, and it was to go to conflict zones around the world and interview opposing sides with a journalist. study the cuisine and the culture for a few days. And at the end of it, bring the guests that you interviewed individually together collectively around the same dinner table. I would cook for them and facilitate how conflict affects them in real life. And so Egypt, Israel, Sri Lanka, Cambodia, Sarajevo, Rwanda, Lebanon, Northern Ireland, Cyprus, Kashmir, Mexican-American border. Like I went to all these places and had that experience. And so I would go there, I would eat for a few days, I would talk to various different people, sometimes members of parliament, even like in Lebanon. And then at the end, again, we would bring the separate, like in like Israel, Palestine, I've been to the West Bank. I've been all through Jerusalem. When I was in Lebanon, I went to Golan and I went out, sort of in Hezbollah territory to the Syrian border, like all these places that are still sort of experience all this conflict. In Rwanda, I got to interview the Hutus and the Tutsis, members of both tribes, and really just talk about what that conflict was all about, and just really, again, using food to bring people together. And so as this sort of person that grew up not experiencing luxury, finding my own path in the food service industry, now there's this sort of anthropology that I have to learn about. And so I have to be able to like connect all those dots. And so again, like I didn't get on an airplane until I was 16 years old. And now I've been to, I don't know, 30 some plus countries or whatever, and to a lot of different places. And it's like food has really just it's been my privilege. That's been my sort of, so hard work in that industry has afforded me the ability or provided me the opportunities to go out and really experience not just different places, but cultures, the world, people. And it's making me better at providing hospitality because I take care of people for a living. And I think that there's a lot of people in our industry that forget that part of what we do. And I think that now the downside to all of this visibility is that the visibility becomes, again, this ability to distribute information is more important than the information that we're actually distributing. And so for me, I'm focused more on good information and good experiences and being a genuine, authentic person who still believes in hospitality and taking care of people.
How much, when we did Top Chef, were you thrown at all by all the makeup and the lighting and the retakes and for example, like I try to make the props, food, whatever, really authentic in my movies, but if the shot's a little better and it looks a little, I'm like, fuck it. Let's just make it look good. Like, does that happen on Top Chef? And did that throw you, or is that part of the? I mean, because show business is, I always say everything in show business is also show business, and so we try to make it look like it's this real thing. But like, can you say that again? But all that stuff.
So again, it depends on the producer that you're working with or production company that you're working with. Some people are better at it than others. Like I work with today, I work with Bobby Flay and his whole production team. And like Bobby's priority is the food.
Yeah.
Food first. So he'll have us make more food, but it's eaten blind off camera sort of before it's eaten on camera so that the integrity of the dish is not compromised or the quality of the ingredients or the preparation isn't compromised. It's like instant. They eat it, take their notes, and then come and do it again, because you're right. There is the blocking, which I don't know if your listeners know what that is, but setting up the cameras and all that stuff and moving it. And, so there are shows and producers that are better at it than others. For me, when I did Top Chef, which was, 13 plus years ago, and now today I'm doing completely different style of television, but still food. I was introverted and I was still like, I'm a chef, I'm serious, I'm not going to like be this person on TV. And in my mind, I was cooking incredible food and making horrible television. But now in retrospect and what happened on that season, we all realized that it actually sort of gave some more validity, I think, to cooking competitions on television if more serious chefs went out and did it. Because for a long time, it was about casting. Like, how do we cast these big personalities? And now I think a lot of people were like, okay, well, that will get us so far. But like now people are more intelligent when it comes to food and they see it. So now if the food isn't as good as what like somebody can do at home, they're like, well, why is that person telling me how I should cook? So then the food started becoming important. And now I think when you look at it today, it's both. So people that can do both, I think it's almost important that you can do both. And it's not going to...
the craft, well, I'm just thinking for you and a lot of people who were able to keep going, the craft came before the showmanship. I mean, now you've got the showmanship. I see you on those shows and it's as entertaining and funny as the product. That's interesting to hear that when you first started, you were really more introverted and focused on just getting that thing done under the time constraints that you were given.
And that goes back to what I said earlier about I enjoy that part of going up the hill more than like getting there, because then when you start to see the opportunity, you're like, okay, well now this is another skill set that I can learn. And that's why I think it's funny about the sort of actors being servers and stuff like that. Like I wasn't saying that to be mean. I was saying it to like give an opportunity. Like if not for anything else, use my restaurant as one, you're getting paid, and two, to practice your craft. And I really encourage that in a lot of ways for all the creatives that I employ, and I still do that. I've had visual artists, singers, comedians, actors, sort of musicians, all that stuff. Like, how can I help you creatively? But when you're here, like, help me, sort of do a great job in my restaurant. And I've got a lot of friends that have now succeeded in their creative space, having come through my restaurant in Vegas. All the art on the walls, most of the art on the walls came from Keith, who washed dishes at Ink, my first restaurant on Melrose. Yeah. And now he's succeeded as an artist. He's a brilliant watercolor painter. He sculpts. He does all these things. Plug him, Instagram at Baker's Son. He makes these incredible sculptures that he paints, and like now he has a place. My restaurant is like a gallery for his art in Vegas. And so again, like I always stay true to that. What else do you do? And that's part of the interview process is like, okay, and if you're a career server, that's fine. But like, I'm actually interested in the other things that you do too, because there might be an opportunity for you to make my business better too, or make me better, or I can learn something. I think the script that you're talking about back when you were a server, that's become sort of obsolete. And I think now people genuinely want to connect with the person's personality. Like if Hayes came to the table, like be that guy from Chicago. Like I don't want, because now all of a sudden you get this, welcome to my restaurant. This is a restaurant where it's small plates meant for sharing. We recommend 2 to 3 dishes per person. My favorite dish is on the menu. And then they name the beef. They name the most expensive thing. And then they name like another dish that's like, it's all layups. And then you ask them like, but do you really like that beef dish? And they're like, no, I'm a vegetarian. And I'm like, but I asked you what your favorites were. And they're like, well, that's like the best selling dish. And you're just like, but that's not what I asked you.
Like, it bothers me when a waiter tells me what's popular. I'm like, who do you think I am? Like, I'm not gonna order it specifically because you said it was popular. I just don't care that you think it's popular. It also bothers me when they ask me if I've ever been to this restaurant before. Like I get it. There's a list of food. I'm gonna pick one, and then we're gonna eat that. Like the whole concept. Those two questions bother me greatly. But let me ask you this: were you ever a server?
I have served people, but I've never held the position of server. Meaning I've had to do it in my own places, but I never had it as a job. So you don't realize
what it's like. So I was a waiter. You probably realize this, right? I was a waiter, and the chefs were like mean for sport, it seemed. They were like professionally mean to you. And I'm like, what is this game we're playing here? Like, you guys are just like, and I'm like, is it just because it's really hot back there? I mean, when it gets hot in July, I get a little meaner, I suppose. But I mean, these guys are like, and then you watch a show like The Bear. My friend Joel McHale plays the mean chef in that. And I'm like, I know that mean chef. I mean, not that mean, but you know what I mean? Like, what is it? Is it like, film directors used to be tyrants and mean, and then that kind of went out the window. Like, there was a point where chefs were expected to be mean to everybody, right?
I think we were sort of taught that, like that was the culture, right? And then, I mean, if you're speaking specifically between like the front of the house and the back of the house, I mean, historically, the front of the house always came in a lot later. They worked less hours and they made a lot more money. And then the chefs were coming in way earlier, to your point, standing in the kitchen in the heat and making a lot less. And so you had this sort of dynamic of the person in the back was developing a career for themselves and getting good at something that they were going to do forever. And then the person in the front was sort of passing through, transitioning to whatever else they were doing in their life. And this was sort of subsidizing their lifestyle until they figured out what they actually wanted to do. But it's rare to have career servers, specifically in LA. But if you go to like New York, Chicago, these places where it's really known for service, not to say that there's not good service in LA, because there is, but like there are cities where there are career servers. And so all of a sudden, but like this like mean chef mentality, yeah, it was a common thing. Like it was something that was happening everywhere. And then all of a sudden, like for obvious reasons, and I happen to agree with a lot of them, like you can't behave that way. Like people are coming to work. And so we always talked in the kitchen, you know, we treated it a lot more like you're a professional. So if you were a doctor's assistant in surgery, like you wouldn't be like, hey doc, like pass me the fucking scalpel, hurry the fuck up. Like you're like, yes, doctor. And so we have these conversations at work. Like if you weren't working in a kitchen and you were working in a bank, you're like, hurry up with them fucking hundos. Like you wouldn't do that. You wouldn't say that. Like, so why do we speak to each other like that here? And so then you start to tell people like this is an opportunity for you to become a better version of yourself. And I think that that's what the industry did for me. Because like I said earlier, I hadn't experienced luxury. I didn't know how to effectively communicate. I didn't know how to cook until I learned that skill. But there were so many other life skills that I learned in these structured environments that would translate into my real life, my personal life. And I'm grateful for that. Like the fact that this industry didn't just pay me to or give me a career, but it also changed me as a person. And I got to grow up very early, and I had to, because I was living on my own when I was 16 years old. Like I had to become an adult very early. And I think I learned a lot of my, growth working in restaurants. And I think it was the best sort of school for me.
Listening to you say that reminded me of what I was talking about at the beginning, where Goran set a hierarchy for the entire organism of the restaurant. And I walked into that not knowing that there was a beat being set and that I had to play within that band. I kind of came in with my own flair, and that's why it was a very steep learning curve for me. But I understand it and appreciate it more now that serious chef that you were talking about was kind of how it had to be. Because listen, these prices, when you go in there, like people got to get hip to that's what they're paying for. You can go get some of the food that you get at a restaurant at a different place for much cheaper. But what justifies the experience of getting that food at this place and dining? It's called dining, and it's a whole experience around dining. And this is what I wanted to ask you, Mike. Like when you started bringing in like the artistry of like liquid nitrogen and like just taking traditional dishes that people didn't think much about and recreating them, that's like, that's art in a way. And I don't think people thought of food like that up until, 10 years ago.
Yeah. And then but it's kind of dangerous to say that because, then you're talking about the subjectivity of it. So then it's like, well, if I don't like broccoli, or if you don't like broccoli, but I like to cook it, I can't force you to eat broccoli. But then I started looking at that as a challenge, right? Like if I cook stuff for people that don't like it and make them like it, then all of a sudden, like I've created some magic with the food that I'm cooking. But I feel like a lot of the creative process that I use is selfish because I am doing it a lot for myself. Like I want to do this. I want to look at it differently. I want to do it differently. And it's not going to be for everybody, but I hope it's for some people. And I hope that people can sort of look beyond the technical execution or this or that or whatever and think to themselves like, wow, it's really cool that like this is something that he wanted to share about himself with us. But then as a business owner, I have to think about, well, how do I make stuff that a lot of people are going to want and crave? And so now that I've gotten older and more mature in my career, I see the value in both. And so I'm trying to create this opportunity or experience where I can achieve both. And I think you just said it, like where I take stuff that people have had before and recreate it. At least I can connect with them. If I write it on the menu, oh, pot roast, I've had that before. Okay, I'll get that. But then all of a sudden it comes out in Vegas at our restaurant there, and it's in a Corningware dish with the blue flowers on the side, and it's beef cheeks that have been cooked sous vide and the carrots were treated separately, the onions were treated separately, and the whole dish really took a lot of technical execution, but it looks like pot roast. And so now I'm satisfying both my needs to like sort of explore and play with food and not get sort of bored with the process, but also for somebody that just wants a casserole full of pot roast, I'm giving them that. And so now as I'm developing everything moving forward, again, I'm a firm believer in like bringing some of that old school hospitality back, or at least the need to really want to take care of people. Because the other thing that's happening in our business is like a lot of these places make you feel like you should thank them for allowing you to be there. Like, thank you for letting me eat at your restaurant, or thank you for this reservation. And yeah, you should have gratitude towards the establishment, but at the same time, the establishment should have a lot more gratitude for you being there than you are for getting to be there. And I think that that's this sort of weird thing that's happening in a lot of places. It's like, are you even cool enough to come in here? It's like, what does that have to do with hospitality?
That's interesting. I mean, that, you know, like there's so many elements of that that are exactly the same as, you know, like in our comedy group, Broken Lizard, we're only ever writing jokes to entertain ourselves. Not because we're so self-centered, but because we think we can't write a joke that we're hoping the world will like. We can only write a joke that we all think is funny, and we then assume that there are other people like us out there. And so if there are, then they'll also think it's funny. And that's to us the purest way to make great jokes. And the bigger picture is we make a movie that we think, well, on the surface, a lot of people, it's like the pot roast, will want to see this kind of movie, cop movie, beer drinking teen movie, whatever it is, right? But the details are they're only for us. They're only our private stories. They're only if this thing happened to me in a bar. This girl rejected me this way. We just go very granular and specific and hope that other people had similar situations.
But those details are why somebody's going to watch that film 2 or 3 or 4 times versus just watching it once. And that's kind of the same thing we're trying to do in the restaurants. Like, we got your attention. You ate here once. We want you to come back and look for those other things that we really put into it that weren't obvious. And I think with your work, it's very similar. Like, a lot of your movies can be watched over and over again, and you can realize that you're laughing at something completely different the second time you watched it than you did the first time. And I think that that's kind of what we're trying to do with the restaurants and the food too. It's like, oh, I didn't realize you got, or it's like, oh, I got that. Okay, I'm now confident in you. Now I want to see what else you have. And so then they'll watch the next movie or order the other dish.
Yeah.
And there are a lot of similarities with what we do compared to what, sort of what you guys do. The tricky thing for me is now I'm doing both. Now I have to like do what you guys do and still be a chef and still be a restaurateur. And so, like, even having conversations like this, like, I get to learn from that. And, being friends with other creatives helps me be better at what I do on a daily basis. And not like, I don't hang out with just chefs. Like, I try and hang out with as many different creatives as possible, because all of our process is kind of the same, or the way we think or what our goals are. But at the same time, some people have a better way of getting there. And I think that I can learn that.
Well, you're in dialogue with your audience, right? Or you're the people that are there for your nuances that you talked about, Jay, or the flares that you have, Michael. Like, they come in and you're kind of talking to them. The next time they come is built on the last time they came. And I wanted to get your take on a trend that's happening where, you can open some menus and literally have every option in the world, from seafood to Asian to Americana, all this different stuff. And that's a lot of food that you got to keep on stock in the kitchen because people don't order. Versus you come in to this place on this night and here's what you're eating. That was a trend that started, which I began to appreciate more. One, because I think just in terms of efficiency and waste, it probably makes more sense. It's probably easier to run a business that way too. You got this many people coming in and this is what you're serving. But then also people have to get hip to the fact they don't have options for everything that they want. Do you think that's a trend that's going to keep going?
I do think that there is a trend in what you just said, meaning like, do one thing and do it really well and people will line up for it. Like, look at Courage Bagels in LA. They opened up this bagel shop. It's the best, best bagels around LA or whatever. People stand in line and wait in line for these bagels.
That's a Studio City place that like pop up or something.
I think it's Silver Lake?
Okay.
Los Feliz, East Side, I think. But the idea that now I can go somewhere specific for one thing. Look at steakhouses, but again, steakhouses now have to have vegetarian options and fish, and so it's not so. The idea of trends needs to just go away. Like, I think business owners should, if they have an idea and they want to start a business and they're passionate about that business, they need to do it. And then they need to communicate with their audience and make sure that they're giving them something that they want. But to speak specifically on trends, I think, yes, it is becoming a sort of trend to do a few things really well and reduce the size of what you're offering, mostly because the economics don't make a lot of sense anymore either. Like, what you guys pay for food at the grocery store, you see the prices. We're paying similar prices for the food in the restaurants. And so now we have to add the labor, add the occupancy, add sort of all the other things that come, the expense of owning a business to the price of that. But people only see like, oh, $40 steak. That steak should be $40 then. And it's not. There's a lot more that goes into being able to put that steak in front of you, including the plate that it's on.
I had my brother was on our podcast a couple months ago, and we were telling stories to Jay, and a lot of stuff what came up was how we drive each other nuts and the things about each other that like literally it was like a therapy session. We were telling stories about growing up and what he did and drove me nuts and this, but in some ways we're in the same atmosphere, in the same business, and we talk, and there's a real binary relationship. You've had a similar thing with your bro in timing and coming up, and it's really unique. I think I don't know a duo like you guys that are out there. Is that easier or harder for you?
It's easier for the business side of it. We decided to become business partners and do everything together, so we have that level of trust because it has to be. Like, we both have individually this innate desire to be really good in our industry. And so we were sort of going in different directions, and then we decided to partner up and be business partners. And so now we have that level of trust. We also have similar creative approaches to everything that we do. So now we can divide and conquer sort of everything that we have. And we made a decision, like, we can work half as hard or accomplish twice as much. And I think that we went with the accomplish twice as much route. Like, we work really as hard as we ever did, but we can be in two places at once. The cool thing about that is, we sort of got to share in our failures and our successes. And I think, the fact that we've gotten to have the same job since we were 15, 16 years old, now into our 40s, and continue to sort of grow and continue to get better and reach new sort of whatevers, to be able to celebrate with each other and support each other at the same time has been great. But also we can be honest with each other. And I think that's the most important part. Like, we can fight with each other like brothers to resolve things that are happening in the professional part of our life. And so sometimes being able to just be that honest prevents shady shit from happening. Like, one of the number one things in our industry that you hear about is like somebody was taking money, or somebody was taking bottles from the bar, or somebody was doing this and that and whatever. And it's like, I know my brother's not doing that, and he knows I'm not doing that. And so, but the competitive side, yeah, a lot of it was tough because I want to see my brother be successful. He wants to see me be successful, but at the same time, individually, if he's getting opportunities that I'm not getting, or I'm getting opportunities he's not getting, then it's like, well, why did he get it? And so there is a little bit of that still. And all we can do is continue to support each other. Like, we're so lucky to get to do what we do. Like, I feel so, I said this already, grateful, and I really am. And I don't know that I ever was able to say that out loud until I got to this point in my career where I've gotten to look back at all the things that I've gotten to do. And it's because of food. It's because of being a chef. Like, that specific thing that I started doing to survive when I was 15, 16 years old, to live, to buy food for myself, to buy clothes, to buy a car. It was necessity. I had to do this, became the number one passion in my life. And my career. So it's almost like to like a younger kid, like I would say, be careful what you start doing when you're young because you might do it for the rest of your life. Like I've been doing this for 30 years. Most people get retirement and pension after 25. Like I'm still doing it. Like I'm still trying to do it. I'm still trying to be good at it. I'm still paranoid that I'm not. I don't feel like I've gotten anywhere. And the fact that I have an industry that where I can continue to do that is just incredible.
Was there an influence, a shared influence when you guys both were young for you to both be on the same trajectory? Was it a family thing? Was it a something that took place around your dinner table? Was there an aunt or a godparent or a weird neighbor that came over and imbued you with this spirit for service and cooking? Or there's no shared?
No, I mean, I was a picky eater. I was a shitty kid. I didn't eat any of the food that my mom cooked, and she made dinner like every day, put it on the table. You know, it was like a casserole or the meatloaf or, you know, like Frito pie type stuff and like breakfast for dinner, like all the classics, the things that moms make, like that was always on the table. My mom was really good at making all that stuff. Pork chops and things like dinner, just normal dinner. But it was the ritual of it. It was the fact that like, okay, we were supposed to sit down at 5:30 and have dinner together that resonated with me. But I was picky. I didn't like the food. Like I didn't like vegetables. I was one of the person that would like put my head down and sleep at the dinner table because my mom would be like, you're not getting up until you finish your dinner. I'd be like, all right, good night. And I would just lay there for hours. She's like, I don't know what to do. He won't fit. Well, he has to go to bed. So eventually she'd like give me a glass of milk and send me to bed. I think it was life that got me into it. It was the work ethic of my mom, or this ability to provide, even though we didn't have a whole lot, we had enough. You know, we had what we needed, and so I just wanted to like level that up and like just take what they started and grow it to something else. And I think that we've been able to do that. It is odd that my brother and I did it together, but it was more about having a job than it was about I'm going to be a chef. Where like today, a lot of people set out on that journey. They're like, now that's a cool career. I want to do that. I see these people on TV. I think it's incredible. I'm going to be a chef. I remember my father saying to me when I decided not to go to school, I was playing football in high school and I was a kicker. I know you don't consider that a real position, but it was. And I decided not to go to school. And my dad said to me, I figured you would end up working in the food service industry, almost like putting me down, you know what I mean? And to be able to like turn that on its head and turn it into something that I've been able to turn it into today. I didn't know then that's what I was doing, but I did. And so I sort of was able to like prove him wrong, and that feels good.
It's time to vouch. Mike, I started an app called Vouch Vault. It was a revenge app, really, because I got tired of getting 36% fresh ratings on Rotten Tomatoes. And it was from reviewers who I was like, who the fuck are these? They just got a job at the New York Times. What makes them able to judge these R-rated movies that I think are little works of art? And so in revenge, me and two other guys built an app which is something like the Instagram of recommendations. So the way, basically, it's like recommendations, but it's actually from people you know. So from your friends, your family, maybe like a famous chef like you, right? So you would say, what's the best cheeseburger in Chicago, in LA? What is the best cheeseburger in LA, by the way?
I would say burgers never say die.
Never
right
say die.
In
Okay,
Silver Lake.
Thank you.
It's literally called Burgers Never Say Die.
That's a great name.
So today I'm going to vouch for, this movie, it's called Flirting. I started watching it. I have a couple of like gaps in my movie going experience where I just haven't seen that movie. Dirty Dancing, obviously, Footloose I haven't seen, maybe the dancing movies. But there was one called, I'm not going to tell you what it is because I turned it off in the middle and I'm like, it wasn't good. Anyway, I threw it away. I didn't watch it. But then I was about 3 glasses of wine into my night, and I decided to watch Flirting with Disaster by David O. Russell, the filmmaker. And it is so goddamn funny and great. And it's Ben Stiller. Tia Leone is just a skinny babe, so smart. And Patricia Arquette and Alan Alda and Lily Tomlin and Mary Tyler Moore and George Siegel. Boy, is it a funny movie. It is a funny, simple, great comedy. So, Flirting with Disaster.
What made you?
That's your
What
vouch for
made
today.
you pick that one up, Jay? I love that movie. Did you?
Well, I was like I said, I was 3 drinks in, and I was in a bind. The thinker had started to slow a little, and I'm like, what should I watch? What should a new thing? I don't know. And then I'm like, it's such a it's one of my favorite movies. So and then it just ended up being the one.
Was that after he did Spanking the Monkey too? Right?
He did Spanking the Monkey. Yep,
Yeah,
he did.
And
He
this
did.
is his next. That was the.
Yeah.
Those were independent films.
Yeah.
Like he was truly doing stuff out of the box at the beginning.
Flirting with
and
Disaster
then
was Miramax.
I think
but-
it was on the street cred of.
Yeah, but it was cheap. It was a cheap movie, and I believe it's his best movie.
I'm going to give it a rewatch. I've started watching a show. I think maybe a guest we had recommended a show. And again, Michael, these could be anything from, tennis shoes you're into or anything. We just happen to have 2 references. Mine is television. I think one of our guests, maybe Allison Brie, talked about it. It's Drops of God on Apple.
Oh, right.
I haven't watched that many Apple shows. This one is, I'm just starting it, but talking with Michael, talking about the food industry and also siblings. There's a sibling element to it, and it's all takes place around. The quick premise is, a father dies, and he sets up a contest between his estranged daughter and his spirit son, a Japanese guy. And the goal is he's got a $140 million wine stash, and whoever, if they pass these 3 tests, gets to have the inheritance of the wine stash. Like, it's such a cool premise. And right away, I'm like, I have to watch, like, I'm in, just based on the idea itself. And it's one of those shows, a little bit like Shogun, where there's subtitles, so you can't check your phone all the time, which, is in, if you're watching at home, it's a different commitment nowadays. Like, you really got to settle in and watch it, but I think it's worth it.
So I'm gonna vouch for 2 things. Since we're doing a podcast, I'm gonna vouch for another podcast, if not yours.
Right.
Scamfluencers. And your wine story just reminded me of that. There's a podcast called Scamfluencers, and it basically they're the best. I won't even say anything else. Just find it. It's on Spotify or wherever you get your podcasts. I think I did the commercial right. Now,
wait, what's the premise of it?
vouch.
Scamfluencers, are they?
They basically go through the most notorious scammers on the planet and tell their whole story about what their scam looked like and then how it all fell apart. But it's so my wife is currently we're expecting a baby, and I don't know if you guys know this, but when that's happening, you get a lot of stuff sent to you. Families and friends send you everything, everything. So none of it's for me. It's for my wife, and it's for the baby. And so there was this opportunity to sort of cherry pick something, and now we have 2 because it was important. The pregnancy pillow, this thing. I think every human being needs to have. It's like a giant airplane, thing. But she got this. And I had to get another one because this is the best thing in your bed. One, like, if you're not a big cuddler, you can sort of, this is like a force field around you. So
pillow.
You can just
yes.
But then if you want them, you can open it up and let them in if you want to. And you can, it's just one of the most versatile pieces. I'll call it a piece of furniture, but every man should have a pregnancy pillow because it's.
I am a huge. I remember the days when the pregnancy pillow came out, and it's like Switzerland during World War II. It was this border in the middle of what's ever happening in that bed at night because there is so much tossing and turning going on, and you lay that thing down, it can be a border or you could throw a leg over it and stretch the pelvis. Like it is.
But you could also like wear it as a
Yes.
scarf. I mean, there's
It's
just
a little bit-
there's so much
Wow.
you can do with this thing.
It's
I
so
love it.
great.
So
love it.
I'm going to send you each one.
That's so
That's
great.
awesome. I love it.
So great.
So guys, go out and get yourself a pregnancy pill.
That's fantastic.
Even you don't have to be pregnant; just get one.
I'll bet
Yeah.
that's the first pregnancy pill has ever been vouched for on Vouchful. I think that's got to be the first. But probably not the last. All right, cool. That was fun, Mike. I appreciate that. That was really great.
My pleasure.
Anything
Thanks
you
for
want to
having me,
promote
Michael.
before we cut off?
No, I just think I think having a good conversation, and I think we
All right,
did
great.
that. You know what I mean? At the end of the day, sometimes it's just about linking up and having a good
Okay,
conversation.
good. Thanks, Mike. Appreciate it.
Thanks, man.
Thank you,
Thanks,
guys.
guys.
Mustache Tales.